A little while ago, we took a look at a video from a guy called Adnan called Does God Exist? Why I Believe God Exists. And today we're looking at a follow-up to that video called Does God Exist? Why I Believe God Exists. Yeah, for some reason it has the exact same title, I don't know why.
Look, last time I messed up. I agree and accept it.
That's right. This Does God Exist video, apparently, is to sort of supersede the other one, which apparently sucked. Which is cool, actually. If he's learned from some of his mistakes, this could end up being a lot better.
But this time, it will be different.
I certainly hope so. The other one ended up with this thumbnail and the title, God Exists Because Plants Can't Understand Dogs. And that was not an overstatement, that was actually something that came up in the video. If you haven't watched it, that should probably indicate something to you about its level of quality. It also included such incredible scientific knowledge as if the Earth moved 1 centimeter closer to the sun, we'd all die. Which, as a number of commenters pointed out, would make jumping one of the most dangerous things you could do. It was bad, but there's no need to dwell on that, because it's going to get fixed here, presumably.
Because I studied many books now. I watched many videos. So I will actually have good arguments now.
Okay, but you also thought you had good arguments last time. Now, okay, I understand. You think this time you've put in a lot of study and really figured this stuff out. Okay, but the video that I responded to came out on May 21st, 2024. This video of yours came out on June 22nd, 2024. So that's 1 month for all of this study, all of this reading, all of this watching that you've done. And if you've done this in response to the criticism, well, my video came out on June 16th, 2024, 6 days before this. Now, I don't care if you were studying for 6 days or a full month. You're not going to be extremely more knowledgeable after that period of time. That's just not going to happen. And if your skill at forming an argument and identifying fallacies or poor reasoning was so bad 1 month previous to this, it's not going to be amazing now, regardless of what you read. It might be a little better, but not so much that it's even worth saying this. It's like practicing the guitar or reading a language phrase book or lifting weights for a week and then going, yeah, I'm great at this now.
So, first of all, if you're gonna comment, you better watch till the end.
But he's laying down the law.
Because if you don't, then you have no rights to comment, because the best ones will be at the last.
Not a good strategy, leading with your worst material. Really what you should have done is take your best, 1 or 2, maybe 3 arguments, put those at the start, and then cut off the entire rest of the video. If these ones you're going to lead with are kind of mediocre and are going to lead to people leaving critical comments, why even say them?
So first of all, if you look at these people...
I'd love to. Could you zoom in on them? I can barely even see what's going on.
What do you see? Do you think they believe in God?
I don't know. Let me try zooming in myself. Seriously, it's like a small dark square. I can barely make out what you're looking at. Maybe I just don't have the best eyes. There's a reason I have to wear these prescription anaglyph glasses. But still, you don't have anything higher res? Come on. Okay, here we go. It's kind of fuzzy still, but now I kind of get what you're talking about. They seem to be dressed up as either some sort of folkloric forest creatures or demons, one or the other. So do they believe in God? Well, I don't know. I doubt they're hardcore Christians or Muslims. They might be lukewarm types doing some kind of performance art, or they might believe in other gods. But of course, yeah, an atheist is going to be less likely to be concerned about demon imagery than some religious people, because we don't think it's real, it's just fantasy. But I would be very surprised if no Christian and no Muslim ever dressed up like this, especially in show business. That's a weird place. But alright, what's the point?
Do you think they believe in God?
Didn't I just answer that? I'm not going to say all that again.
Look at them. What is this?
Some sort of cosplay, I guess?
Oh, what is this?
Some sort of cosplay, I guess. You gotta listen to me the first time.
Do you think they believe in God? No.
Okay, apparently that time you asked yourself and then answered your own question.
They're atheists, 100%.
I wouldn't put 100% on that. I'd probably put a higher number on it than the general population percentage, because, for example, really serious Christians, like the hardcore fundy types, are probably not even candidates, so whatever percentage of the population they constitute is excluded, and so every other group of people is going to be scaled up in terms of their likelihood of being the group these people belong to. Now, if I knew more about these people, what they were saying, what they were doing, I might somehow be able to narrow it down further, but as far as I can tell, these are just people sitting there in costumes. Hell, maybe they're even in makeup for a movie or a music video or something. I don't know. If you're gonna give this to me as an argument for God somehow, you gotta give me a bit more information. I got nothing to go on. Now, more to the point of this actual video, why are you showing me your Google Doc of your points for the video? This is clearly not the most compelling way to present this content, and you know that because one of your points is visual. Calm and serene imagery, people in contemplative poses. I mean, I guess you could characterize their pose as contemplative, and yours too, I suppose, but I don't think that's what the note is asking for. Anyway, you have other stuff written down there, presumably you're gonna say some of it, so I won't bother reading it.
They're atheists, 100%. Like, no purpose, no morals, there is no afterlife. Why care about anything?
What do you mean? If those people are atheists, then there are no morals and no purpose? No afterlife? It sounds like you want to make some kind of a connection, but you're not saying what it is. You've written down notes with presumably kind of the connection you want to make, but then you just don't bother saying it.
This is scary reality if you think about it.
What, not having any morals or any purpose, or there not being an afterlife? Well, no, it's not really scary. Why would that be scary? But it doesn't really matter anyway. On 2 out of 3 of those points, it's not a reality anyway. Humans are incredibly efficient morality and purpose-generating machines. Those are a couple of our most prominent psychological features. To a human, everything is dripping with moral implications and purpose, to the point that we're incredibly biased towards assigning these qualities to things, even when it makes essentially no sense to do so. But if we weren't like that, that wouldn't be scary. We would just have a different behavior. But so how is what scares you supposed to be an argument that God exists somehow? And speaking of arguments that God exists, you said at the start of the video that you screwed up last time. Could we take a step back before we jump into these new arguments that God exists and talk about why the other ones failed? I'm really curious where you think the problem was there, if you understand what the actual issue was, because I'm getting the impression that you're off to just as rocky of a start this time as last time, and I feel like you'd be using your time in a much more useful way if instead of just delivering a whole new dump of random crap that you haven't thought through, you actually stopped and contemplated what went wrong in the other video and what you need to do to avoid that happening again.
If everyone is like, there is no afterlife, there is no God, we won't have any judgment. Like, everyone will do something stupid.
Everyone does stupid stuff regardless. You just said you screwed up your last video. That was stupid. But you believe in the afterlife.
Like, it's a scary reality. I don't want to say what, because if you can think, you will know what I'm talking about.
No, I have no clue what you're talking about because you're saying random disconnected sentences with no meaningful content. Don't rely on me to make your points for you in my head. If you have a point you want to make, if you want to say something, say it. Is this what you think a good argument looks like? Is this the result of all your study? Just, I'm not going to bother making an argument. You know the argument. No, you can do that. Or maybe you can't, and that's why you're not.
Do you have morals?
Yes.
Where did they come from?
Well, they're basically a product of my reaction to my life experiences interfacing with my biological predispositions. I guess that's a quick and dirty way to put it.
Are they a product of our subconscious minds?
Partially, sure.
Or are they divine influence?
Not as far as I can tell.
Like, I think we're born with morals.
Yeah. To a point. Not all the little detailed stuff, all the weird little cultural quirk stuff, but I do think that children past kind of the newborn stage, when they become capable of sensing the world around them and understanding it to some extent, do tend to have certain preferences about other people's behavior, where certain things people do, even if not to them, will almost certainly make them upset, or almost certainly do the opposite. But these are very broad strokes. These are not the detailed moral codes that people gradually develop as they get older. So I agree in a sense, but I think you're talking about the entirety of human morality, or at least correct according to your religion human morality, and that I disagree with. You'll have to give me a reason to accept that. That's a much bigger claim.
But where do they come from? Do they come from nothing?
No.
And second?
Wait, what was the first? You haven't made an argument yet. You just asked a couple of weird questions and said some random things. I'm starting to think maybe you should have spent another 6 days hitting the books.
Throughout history, dreams have provided revelations. Like this guy. He dreamt of snakes biting its tail and discovered the structure of benzene.
Yeah, you're talking about Kekule's discovery of the benzene ring. Here it is from Wikipedia, good enough. He said that he had discovered the ring shape of the benzene molecule after having a reverie or daydream of a snake biting its own tail. This vision, he said, came to him after years of studying the nature of carbon-carbon bonds. This was 7 years after he'd solved the problem of how carbon atoms could bond to up to 4 other atoms at the same time. So this is a guy who spends a lot of time thinking about this. This is a big deal for him. This is something his brain is going to be chewing on, whether he's conscious of it or not, a lot of the time. I have a similar thing sometimes where I'm working on a video, I don't quite know how to phrase something, maybe I record something, and I go, yeah, it's good enough, I guess, and I decide to leave it. But then a couple days later, I'm falling asleep or I'm having a shower, and all of a sudden I have like 6 paragraphs of text in my head, and I'm like, oh, I have to write this down. This is just how your brain works. There's a lot more going on inside your head than just your conscious experience. A lot of the time, if I have a problem to solve, I'll just kind of sit back and stare up at the ceiling, or close my eyes maybe, and just sort of let it happen without really thinking too hard about it. And after a couple minutes, the answer often comes to me. Now, you're bringing this up presumably to imply that there's some kind of a miracle going on here, but what reason is there to think that? Are you just going to shrug and say, it's got to be God because I said so? Or what?
Elias dreamt of spears with eyelets and invented the sewing machine.
Okay, I didn't understand a word you said. Sorry, no offense. And so I looked at the screen to try to figure out what you said, and nothing like what you said is on the screen, even though you're obviously reading it from the screen. That was very confusing. Eventually, I decided to go back through your video and see if anything like this had been on the screen, and it had, over 20 seconds earlier. Here it is. Elias Howe dreamt of spears with eyelets and invented the sewing machine. That's what you were trying to read.
Elias dreamt of spears with eyelets and invented the sewing machine.
And so now I'm realizing that what we're seeing on the screen is not what you're seeing on the screen, at least not at the same time. You've edited that in afterwards, I guess, like 20 seconds out of sync. And I looked forward, and this applies to the entire video. Why have you done this? Did you upload this without watching it back? How lazy are you?
So, if you actually think about it, where are they coming from? You know?
What, thoughts and dreams? The brain. Look, you sound again like you want to make an argument, but you haven't made it. Just tell me what argument you want to make. Say it out loud.
And the creation and the universe.
All right, I guess that's enough on the dreams topic. I guess that wrapped that one up. Moving on to the creation and the universe now, which I'm sure also won't even be an argument.
Who made the book? The book. Let's say this book. Who made this book?
I don't know, it's really small and you mirrored the video, and I don't care enough to bother flipping it back.
Well, humans did, but where did it come from?
So you answer the question and then you ask the same question again?
Trees?
Oh, where did it come from in that sense? Okay. In that case, sure.
And where did the trees come from? The seeds? And where did the seeds come from? Nature?
In a very general sense, I guess, yeah.
Well, who created nature? Oh, well, people say Big Bang.
No, people don't say Big Bang in answer to the question, who created nature, because the Big Bang is not a who, and it's not a creator. It's a way of explaining certain observed features of reality, and sometimes a description of certain aspects of origins. The answer to the question, who created nature, is stop asking loaded questions.
But who made the Big Bang? You know?
There's no reason for me to believe anyone did that. The only anyones I have any indication actually exist are things of the Big Bang, within the universe that originated. I don't even assume there's someone on the next solar system over, even though I know those kinds of someones exist, at least here, and that it makes sense, at least in principle. Why would I assume that there's someone who precedes the Big Bang? Why would I assume that someone had to do that? The size of the leap in thinking I would have to make to come to a conclusion like that is insane.
Like, where did the Big Bang come from? Was it atoms?
No, atoms are spacey, timey things.
Tiny strings of energy?
I don't know. If someone can show that, good for them, I guess.
But who made tiny strings of energy?
Why do you think everything comes down to who did something? What is your basis for this? You do some things, therefore everything has to be the product of someone doing something? Or what? If that's not it, fine, but what's the argument? You haven't made a single argument yet in this entire video.
Like, what is nothing?
The absence of something? Why do you ask?
What? Because the universe it wasn't made forever, like it had to be created.
Okay, why?
And you can see the signs.
Like what?
The signs prove it.
Okay, what signs and how?
That it had to be created. It wasn't there forever, like.
No, you're getting ahead of yourself. What signs and how do they show it?
And what is nothingness?
The absence of something. Why do you ask? Everything multiple times.
So it created from nothingness.
What is, the universe? I thought you just said someone created it. What do you mean it's created from nothingness? Isn't it created from that guy? Or do you mean he made it out of nothing? Bro, you have a script. Why is this such a train wreck? You planned this.
But how? You know?
I don't know. It's your idea. You tell me. I'm not going to justify your weird beliefs.
So you're saying some tiny strings of energy came out of nowhere?
No, obviously not.
I don't agree.
Good for you.
But, you know, this is Quranic revelation.
So we're just moving on now? That was the whole point? Okay, that's fine, but I hope you understand that the count of arguments in your video is actually 0 right now. If you want that number to bump up, you gotta actually make an argument at some point. Every time you come within sighting distance of anything even like a point, you just sort of wander off to something else.
That predicted hundreds of years ago. Look, we build the heavens with our own powers.
You know, it's so disconcerting when you start reading one Quran quote while highlighting a different one because your background video is so badly out of sync. I can't think of even one redeeming quality to this video.
And indeed, we go on expanding it. So, this was discovered on 1920 by Edwin Hubble. And the Quran said it is expanding.
Yeah, I just addressed this back in May. I'm not going to bother. Go watch the video I made addressing some somehow far superior video about Quranic apologetics. But I will say, at least at this point, you've made one sort of argument. It's not your own argument. You just took it off the internet somewhere. But hey, at least it is an argument about something.
Like many years ago than this. So, how did the Quran know? Was it a human, like people say? Well, how did he know it was expanding?
Well, he didn't, obviously. That's modern people reading what they want into it with the benefit of hindsight. As I went through reasonably thoroughly in that video I did about Quran miracles, it's very obvious if you take all the references to this sort of thing in the Quran as a whole, that Muhammad was not thinking about the universe in any way like you're pretending he was. You're innovating. You're putting words in Muhammad's mouth. You're shoving your hand up Allah's ass and using him as a puppet to say things he never said.
I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed.
Do not the believers see that the heavens and earth were a close-up mass, then we clove them asunder?
Which doesn't even sound like it has anything to do with the Big Bang.
Like this guy, like, you know, this suggests higher power, like if you actually study it.
No, it sounds pretty much in line with what I would expect from 7th century mythology. Like the quote you just read, "The heavens and the earth were a closed up mass, then we clove them asunder." You're trying to imply that this sounds in some way like modern cosmology, but how? I see no resemblance at all. You could try arguing for it. I don't think you would succeed, but at least you would have tried. But you're too lazy even to do that. What else am I supposed to say to this? It's completely vacuous.
But many of the atheists don't even study the Quran or the Bible.
Oh, it's cool. I got you guys tossing quotes from them at me all day. And all of them amount to primitive superstition or just people repeating ideas that were already floating around at the time, like for example from the Greeks. Or things that were obvious to pretty much everyone. None of them line up in any meaningful or surprising way with modern science. And of course they don't. None of the people writing these books knew anything about modern science.
And down below I will say more things. You know, I'm not finished.
Well, say them then.
And look at this. Human existence and soul. Who are we?
You notice how everything you have written there is a question? You notice how there's no argument in sight? It's just a series of disconnected, what I assume you think are deep questions. If you want to just ask me questions, go ahead. That's not an argument. It's a conversation starter.
When someone dies, we see the body, but the self is gone. Like, who are we?
What do these things have to do with each other? When you die, you're not there as a personality anymore, sure. Who are we? What does that question have to do with that topic? Nothing.
Are we like that some self? But who is the self?
The self is whoever the self is. I don't know how that's not self-explanatory.
Like, can we see ourselves? No.
By which you don't mean see the exterior of your body, right? You mean see your personality as like a physical object. I think that's what you mean, in which case, of course, the answer is no, because that's a process, not an object.
This is physical body, but we leave.
We leave? No, you don't leave. You stop. All the stuff that's happening simultaneously to create that phenomenon ceases. That's why, for example, if your brain blows up, it's insta-death. It stops that whole process real fast.
Like, it's just so crazy. Like, our soul, if you don't believe in soul, I don't know what you believe in, but our soul is unseen. We can't see our soul.
You clearly think this is deep, and this is so shallow and pointless.
Same with God. We can't see the God because it's in the unseen.
Oh, is that the stand-in for the argument part? You can't see a soul, and you can't see a God, but there is a soul, so there's also a God. You didn't make that argument, but it seems like you're maybe thinking that? Is that the argument you would like to make if you felt like making any?
So, you need to think about, who are we?
We're a bunch of different people?
Like, if someone dies, we can see their body, but the person himself is gone.
The body has ceased to produce consciousness and thought and so on, yes. The personality has shut off, much like the digestion has shut off, the respiration has shut off, the circulation has shut off. Yeah, when you die, your functions cease. That's what death is. What does that have to do with this weird who are we question you keep asking? Actually, what does it have to do with it? It seems to have no relationship at all.
How? You know?
Well, a process can't continue if the requirements for it to continue are not met.
Someone prove me, like, I don't know, like, why do people not think about it?
People think about it.
You know? This, we already said it. This, and we made the sky a protected ceiling.
Yeah, that and many other examples in the Quran are what I'm talking about when I say that Muhammad most definitely did not have a modern scientific understanding of the universe. The sky is not a ceiling over the earth. The Muslim apologists want to interpret this in a way that lines up with modern science, and they try to say things like, oh, the atmosphere protects us, but those kind of apologetics are based on such an obvious, desperate reinterpretation that it's actually funny.
This all says that the universe is expanding and protecting ceiling around the earth, which is ozone layer.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, what he was actually talking about wasn't a ceiling. It was really the ozone layer, which is like a metaphorical ceiling. No, the ozone layer is not a ceiling. And if you want to interpret this as a broad metaphor, then that's just you reading into it, twisting it to mean something that there's no indication that it ever was supposed to mean.
Like, this is all from Quran.
Yeah, I know, and this kind of stuff is why people don't find the Quran impressive.
And the Quran was made, what? How many years ago?
Long enough for people to commonly think like this, I guess.
And these discoveries were like after years after Quran. So who made the Quran? Because how could people predict this? They had no science back then.
No, they did, or at least natural philosophy. Obviously, modern science has a lot of sort of checks and balances and tools that we've come up with over the years to try and get more consistent and reliable results. But people were still trying to figure out the universe back then, and long before Muhammad as well. Which is why a lot of what Muhammad says seems to come, for example, straight from the Greeks. They were already very into figuring out the natural world. But this stuff in particular is none of that. This is biblical firmament stuff. There's a dome over the earth stuff. In these particular quotes you've chosen, there's no hint of any scientific knowledge at all.
It's crazy, you know? People don't think about it because they don't study the Quran or the Bible.
I just thought about it, and you're dumb.
Now, this one, but mark this, there will be a terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves.
Lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lover of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness that denies power. Because of this, God gave them over to sinful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural sexual relationship for unnatural ones, meaning woman with woman, man with man. In the same way the man, with other man,
Your background cut out before you were done because it's out of sync and you didn't notice. But so in other words, people are going to do things we don't like, most of which we already have words for, and therefore obviously people already do, and some of which already have multiple Bible stories dedicated to them encouraging people not to do it. It's just another vague Bible prediction that applies to all of human history. It reminds me of the one with, there will be wars and rumors of wars. Like, yeah? What else is new? People are going to do nasty, mean things. Yeah? What else is new? What do you think all those stories about the sins and the evils of man that had to be redeemed by Jesus were just hypothetical, and everyone before Jesus' times was a sinless paragon of virtue? How is this supposed to be novel? The point of the entire biblical story is that it's not. That everyone is like this. That everyone is fallen and sinful and in need of redemption for it. Every single one of those things is something people would have already been doing. How is this a meaningful prediction at all?
You know, how could the Bible predict this?
By looking around at what people were doing and saying, yeah, that stuff, that's what they'll be doing later too.
You know, we're in the last times because, as we know, the Bible proved it.
Because what? You think this is the only time in history that people have exhibited poor character traits? Seriously?
There is Piers Morgan and some other guy who's talking about the existence of God. And if you see their comments, people, atheists, are saying that they didn't know God existed, but some out of nowhere, they got that urge to know that if God existed. They tried, asking for forgiveness to God. Like, how?
Because they're surrounded by religious people telling them the story. How are there converts, is your question? Or just how is anyone ever curious about religion? Same thing as any other idea that floats around. How do people get suckered into multi-level marketing schemes? Or like weird political movements? Or art classes? Any random thing that people are doing is going to draw in somebody. You could just as well ask, how do people decide there is no God unless there really isn't one? That's not a well-formed argument. That's not evidence for anything.
You know what? That's what I say. It has to come from within. It can't be like external. It has to come from within your heart.
Well, at some point you have to be convinced to believe it, which is going to occur within your brain. So I guess in that sense it has to come from within. But that can be a response to a lot of external stimuli. All the stuff people are telling you to try to get you to believe the thing. All the arguments, the emotional appeals, the weird brainwashing tactics, just cultural immersion. But yeah, the actual event of you changing your mind in response is internal. I'll give you that.
I can give you all the reasons. I can give you all the verses in the Quran, Bible, and I can show you all the proofs, but it has to come from within.
Oh, you mean like inside my brain I have to have the level of gullibility required to actually think your arguments are any good? Yeah.
If you're not satisfied in your heart that you don't believe there is God, anyone can tell you there is God with proof, but an ignorant person will not know that there is no God or there is God because he don't want to understand.
Is this your excuse here at the end of the video for failing to make any actual arguments? Like, oh, I could have made actual arguments, but you're just an ignorant person. You don't want to change in your heart, so there's no point me bothering actually doing any work. So that's why all my arguments are either non-existent or terrible, because I don't have to convince you. You have to convince yourself from within your heart.
I know personally people that if you tell them the truth, they will avoid it. They don't want to listen.
Or is it possible that what's actually happening is you make some ridiculous non-argument and they go, that's nice. Let's just move on before I hurt your feelings. So that's all the arguments in the video. He said his better arguments were going to be towards the end, and that never happened, but I guess we're done. So thank you all for watching. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple of bucks per video or per month is enormously helpful, and huge thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. Early access, email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.